On to the second of our panel events, thinking about adopting comprehensive and inclusive approaches to combat the root causes of gender-based violence, both online and offline. So if I could invite the panel members to the stage for this one, and then we'll do some introductions. And just to be difficult, I'm going to sit at this end this time, compared to Niels, who sat at the other end. Wonderful, thank you. So, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Gareth Court. I'm a member of the digital citizenship team at European Schoolnet, working on the Menable project. So, delighted to be joined by our panelists today to talk about different types of approaches. We heard from the policymakers and from industry this morning, thinking about the top-level, high-level approaches to tackling these issues and the root causes of gender-based violence. Now we're going to hear a little bit more from the coalface, if you like, of people actually working actively in education and other areas to tackle these issues in more detail. So delighted to be joined by Donata Federici Manessi, who is a secondary... Thank you very much. Who is a secondary school teacher, English teacher in Italy. Also delighted to be joined by Jacob Donegan, who is a 22-year-old content creator on TikTok, who, as you heard earlier, right at the start, has 1.2 million followers on TikTok. No small amount. Also delighted to be joined by Miriam Halimi, who's a gender advisor and trainer at ROSA, the Flemish Centre of Expertise on Gender and Feminism, and also part of the Move Men movement that focuses on engaging boys and men in gender inequality and violence prevention. And then finally, delighted to also be joined by a colleague of mine, actually from the UK, Sophie Mortimer, who's the manager of the Revenge Porn Helpline based in the United Kingdom. So welcome to all of you. So I think best place to start, actually, is to give you the floor, just a couple of minutes each, just to explain a little bit more about what you do, but also how you came to be involved in the Menable project. And I will just state at this point that as part of the work that we've been doing alongside the research report that you heard about this morning and the toolbox, we also do have a knowledge management working group made up of different members and different key stakeholders. And in fact, all of our panelists sit on that working group, so they are involved in that capacity as well. But it'd be great to hear from each of them to hear about their work and interest in this space too. So we might as well go down the line. So if we start with you, Sophie, I think that's on. There you go.
Thanks very much, Gareth. It's really good to be here, so thank you very much to the Menable team for inviting me and facilitating me being here. So I'm the manager of the Revenge Porn Helpline at South West Grid for Learning in the UK, part of the UK Safer Internet Centre. We support any adult 18 plus in the UK who's affected by the sharing of intimate images without consent. That includes the sharing of images, threats to share, voyeurism and sextortion, and a multitude of different behaviours within those. I'm also responsible for the stopncii.org platform, which is a preventative tool to allow people to create digital hashes of their content to stop them from being shared across our participating platforms. It's only 2 years old, so it's still quite young, and it's growing all the time, but it shows the potential for technologies to tackle some of these issues. Although my helpline responsibilities are primarily about supporting victims and survivors in the UK and supporting them, talking to them about their experiences and what support is available for them, and most importantly, helping them with the removal of online content. I'm a really big believer in prevention being better than cure, which is why the Stop NCII is such a big part of my life, my work, and even my not sleeping hours. But also the knowledge and experience that we've learned from the work of the helpline, from the work of Stop NCII, is something that I believe passionately we need to share. So I'm always very, very keen that we use that knowledge, that experience, and that data that we are holding about people's real experiences, and using it to drive some of that culture change that we really need to see to tackle these issues at a fundamental level. And it's that brings me to groups like this one and to days like today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie.
Hello, I'm Jacob. Thank you so much for bringing me back out here again. I'm mostly known for making content on the app of TikTok, and that's where I mostly put my work into. I'd make videos such as lifestyle content, funny ones, gym, and I also share my transition from female to male, transgender. For people that don't know what that is, basically that's where I was born, biologically a female, but I transitioned to the man that I really am. I would take on why I'm here today is last year I was with Safer Internet Forum and kindly was asked again to come back and to speak on now gender-based violence, and it's all in all for Safer Internet Forum, gender-based violence, it's all to do with safety. So I feel like that's why I was asked here to come and speak on my personal experiences throughout this. I wouldn't be as equipped as a lot of people here, such intelligence. It's unbelievable of what I was hearing today, but to share my personal experience and hope that it resonates with anyone or gives people that push forward to know that doesn't matter how much hate you go through, that you can pursue through anything.
Thank you, Jake.
Okay, so I'm very pleased to be here. I decided to join in because I've always been interested in gender issues, and I try to tackle these issues at school with my students. And I can say that in schools, these issues aren't tackled enough, and the phenomenon of gender-based violence is certainly widespread. It's there, we know it's there, but it's not so easy to detect, because most of these phenomena take place underground. And so sometimes what we see is just the tip of the iceberg, because when students report, they do it at the very last minute. So sometimes what we are informed about is just the end of a process. And I can say that the educational system lacks a system, a program, an educational program, as to the fact that gender-based issues are only tackled as part of the bigger phenomenon of cyberbullying. So it's not usually tackled as a single item, and sometimes we deal with these issues only in our civic education lessons, which are required, we are required by the Ministry of Education to deliver. And so I guess that a wider approach is needed in terms of educational policies, and teachers need to be given a suitable training on this, as most of the times we are not equipped, or at least we can try to solve and try to address these issues, but we are not given a specific training on that. And as I said before, more educational policies have to be adopted. And what I was struck by during the presentation by the project managers, Maria and Chiara, was the fact that students somehow they call for action because they are aware of the problem, and they wish to see a bottom-up approach implemented. And I guess that the fact that the students recognize this as a problem is a good starting point, which means they see the point, they see a problem, and they want to be involved. So this, so if it is true that we need to involve the new generations in social and democratic participation and democratic processes, we should listen to them and involve them as much as we can in the devising of new educational policies, I guess. Okay.
Very well said. Thank you. I think that probably nicely segues into an introduction for Miriam as well. Then.
Hello. I'm Miriam Halimi. I obtained a few years ago my doctoral degree in educational sciences, and it was on the topic of gender in education. While doing that, I was working at the teacher education department, so I was also involved in teacher training. And at the moment, I'm working at the ROSA, which is the Center of Expertise on Gender and Feminism. I work there as as a gender advisor, but also as a trainer. So I mostly train people to talk about these topics. Train in a lot of different contexts, but also in educational context. I'm part of the movement, which is actually an initiative from ROSA and from VZ2Zen, Movement Against Violence. And we collaborate together in working with boys and men in Flanders, the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. We do that through many initiatives, and I was mostly involved the past years in EQUI schools, which is an educational trajectory in schools with youngsters, where we talked about gender equality, relations, sexuality, but also violence and sexual violence, more specifically. It was a 20-hour program, actually, where we worked with youngsters. That project is finished, but it has a free manual for all teachers and everyone working with youngsters to actually do this, so it's freely available. And we also still train teachers in organizing this in our classroom and to try to give them more tools, more language to actually take on this conversation, because actually a lot of teachers do want to have this conversation, and their students as well, but they are quite scared to get into this. So we try to give them some tools to do that. And I think the main reason why I was asked in this work group indeed was because we had an interview on this project, specifically just before this was going off, or at the beginning of this project. And I thought it would be very nice to still be involved in actually working with youngsters on gender-based violence and on online gender-based violence, which I think is an added value as well. So I'm very happy that this work is continued in a European context as well, and that we are still thinking about how to involve boys and men, which we should do for the upcoming years, I think, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, and we're delighted to have all of you on board as part of the knowledge management working group. So actually, just on that point, because you were talking about tools and about being able to have a discussion, I think a good place to start this discussion is about the toolbox that we just had a very brief glimpse of through Niels Christian in the previous session. So just going to come back to each of you, so we'll go back down the line again, of just some initial thoughts about how you think this toolbox could be useful in helping enabling those discussions and working with young people about issues around gender-based violence online.
Thanks. I thought the toolbox looked great. I loved how accessible and relevant and interactive it was. I think it's really crucial that young people are exposed to comprehensive information about online issues, about relationships, about sex, about pornography. And the UK, I don't think we're very good at doing this in the UK. I don't think we're very good at opening up those conversations. I don't think the resources are really adequate, and I think we see a lot of pushing of responsibility for it from parents to schools and back again, and it falls quite a lot in between. But it's really important because our young people, you don't flick a switch at 18 and suddenly they know what to do. And I think it's our job as parents and teachers and society to prepare our children for what the challenges that adult life is going to bring. So I think tools like this are going to be hugely useful for environments to talk to young people and to open up those conversations, not just wag fingers at young people and tell them what they should and shouldn't be doing, but actually talk to them about their experiencing, what they're seeing, and letting them ask questions. How are they going to learn about this stuff if they can't ask questions in safe environments? And there's some great case studies there where people can test what they're thinking and have discussions around that. And I think that's absolutely crucial because this is our next generation of society leaders. They are literally our future. I know it sounds like a cliche, but they really are. And we want them to be as well-rounded and informed and healthy in their attitudes as they can be.
Thank you.
I think that is amazing because seeing this now, I strongly, since starting social media myself, I strongly believe that it was never pushed out. The dangers, the negativity or the responsibilities that come with when you take that step on going online. And one thing with this the Amenable project and this toolkit is that it's going to give the young people an opportunity to sit in the uncomfortableness of whether that be on the pornography side of it, may that be on the hatred side of it, may it make one of the children in that room that have pursued forward and said, say, a bad comment forward or sexualized a woman or did this, it will make them sit and reflect on it in themselves without, as you said there, pointing the finger at them and making the spotlight on them and that pressure on them, but also helping the people that are a victim of the hatred or getting AI taking over, getting these pictures made up of them and stuff. It's actually giving them a visual of what is, as you said, what is to come? What is to come? Because social media is now life. It's like when we were in school and you had, say, the talk about the reproductive system. I remember when you're with all the kids and you're laughing and you're kind of like, that's so funny. But that's what's going to happen. That's where we're going. That's where our future's taking us. It's teaching us to what is to come. And this is the now. Internet is now. We're all going to be online. Young kids are going to go online. It's there. It's accessible. So this is going to give them that way of not feeling uncomfortable in the feeling. It's going to make them feel comfortable in the uncomfortable and actually give them the opportunity to step into it themselves without being pressured. I think it's an amazing thing that you've put together.
Thanks, Jacob. I think that's a really good point, isn't it? It's that actually it's quite important in this area to feel uncomfortable, because if we didn't feel uncomfortable about this, we wouldn't all be sat here having this discussion right now, because we probably would have solved the issue. So the fact that it is uncomfortable is a good thing, and we have to help young people sort of learn how to deal with that to move forward, definitely.
Personally, I really appreciated the concept of the toolkit, and I'm looking forward to using it in my classes. And I think that I absolutely agree with what Mrs. Mortimer said about relationships, educating teens to respect, basically, because families have somehow given up most of the times the role in educating the kids. So somehow the internet has become a sort of self-help tool where kids find all the information they need, and somehow they are we can say they are self-taught in some areas of life where sometimes adult help would be vital, in my opinion. So families have to reconsider also the role in educating their children to respect, firstly, in relationships, and somehow the internet shouldn't be a shortcut to one's self-education in terms of positive, healthy relationships.
Absolutely, no, very well said. Definitely. And finally, Miriam, and hold on to that because I'm coming back to you with the next question, so
okay.
Don't lose the
Thanks
mic.
for the warning. Yes, I was very happy that the toolkit was presented today. I think it is an important tool for youngsters to think and reflect, but also get informed. I think information is also quite an important part of this project because, as you said, like Google is not always the best source of information. I think it's also good because we learn youngsters to take agency in this conversation, actually, and to take responsibility, which I think in this context, youngsters can have a more active role than they at the moment take, as we all actually could take a more active role, I think, in this topic. And I think it's very thoroughly designed and very thoughtful because it's based on real life, daily things that youngsters see, but also the language. Indeed, I think some language can be harsh, but it is what is there. It's active, it's game-based, it has a lot of different forms of gender-based violence and online gender-based violence, which I think some we recognize very easily, but some are also very difficult to recognize. So I think it's very good that it has these different forms and these nuances, and also in different contexts with your friends, in like WhatsApp and all these things, but also in big social platforms, in gaming platforms. So I think it is very reality-based, and I think that's what's very strong of it. I do also see some challenges, and I hope we also have a floor to discuss some challenges. As I see that some of the methods that are used, educational methods, are very strongly on forming an opinion, sharing your opinion, and so on, which is, I think, valuable, but also has some challenges in that sense that if we don't give a lot of context or information to youngsters, that very strong opinions might resonate very easily, and that, as youngsters we all are actually quite prone to peer pressure, but youngsters even more. They might try to think of what is the social norm of this group and share more the social norm, which is mostly more extreme than their own views, just to fit in the group. So I think it will be finding a balance in using the toolbox to give enough context for youngsters to be informed, to know why we're doing this, to also have guidelines on how we're going to have this conversation, and then form opinions and share opinions, because otherwise we might end up with a very brutal conversation, I think, including victim blaming and so on. And I think one of the things that we learned as well in the EquiSchools project was we internalize a lot of these ideas, all of us, also girls, and a lot of the conversations that are popping up are in the sense of victim blaming or finding reasons to excuse gender-based violence. So I think it is very important to think about how we're going to give the guidance also to teachers, so that they find themselves comfortable in guiding this conversation. And I was also wondering if there's, because I like the polling option of like knowing what your group thinks, but also knowing what the general view is. But I was also wondering if there has been thought about a moderation of these responses, because as anonymous responses are there, anonymity also makes violence more possible, let's say. And therefore, the tools might, and I hope it will not happen, but they might be used also to perform gender-based violence. So is there any moderation of this tool?
Actually, if it's all right, if we're just going to bounce over to Niels Christian, because you're probably best placed to respond to that before we move on to some other questions. You're absolutely right to raise those things, though, just while the mic's getting over to Niels Christian. We have discussed different options around the polling and what's going to be the most suitable, but you raise a really interesting point there about it actually facilitating gender-based violence as well.
At the moment, regarding to the polls alone, there is not an option to moderate. Well, basically, there might be for the admin, which means the country partner, but not for the teacher in the classroom. So it pretty much goes down to how you formulate the questions. So of course, the questions should be formulated so you're not able to we're not going to ask, do you think it's okay for A to send this to B? That's not going to be a question. It's more going to be a question of how would you honestly react. For instance, there is a dilemma regarding someone sitting in an online forum, and a third person starts saying pretty creepy stuff to one of his friends. And he's not sure how to manage, so basically he says, "Oh, sorry, I'm in a hurry," and then logs off. So the easy way is when we discuss the dilemma, students might all agree, well, he should have said something and did it. But we want to leave the option for them also to say, well, that's what he should have done. Fairly, I understand why he didn't, because it's very hard, so I might have done the same as him. But it's all about constructing the questions so it shouldn't be able to be used. Well, it shouldn't be able to be turned 180 degrees around and as gender-based violence.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. I think indeed, like, it shouldn't be, but I think it's also good to think about what if it happens, because, well, we had experiences in the project, for example, where it did happen in these anonymous things, and we weren't prepared. And I think I would, in any other new project, I would be prepared, just because we all have good intentions, and I think we all want to work on this, but not everyone has so. And also, they're youngsters. Sometimes it's just I was having fun. I wasn't even intentionally like harming people, but it sometimes happens, and I think, well, it's good to have the option, and I hope you will never need to use the option of moderation, but I think it's good to think about what if it happens.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and we should just add that there is guidance for teachers and educators around the toolbox that they'll be able to use. But I think this discussion just now and the points that you raised highlight that, like all toolboxes, they need to be used with sensitivity and care. And I think particularly tackling issues like this, you need to use some skill, and you need to use it in context, and you need to select the right tools from your toolbox for the right situation at the right time. And all of that requires a great deal of skill, obviously. So it's something that we do need to consider as well around teachers and educators in terms of how we can empower them to use this in a way that then further empowers students without inadvertently, as you rightly said, they're causing more harm than the good that we're trying to create. So on that point, and sort of following on from that discussion, obviously you have a lot of experience in working with these projects, both in and out of the classroom. What other approaches do you think, outside of a traditional educational toolbox, might be important to consider in trying to tackle the root causes of gender-based violence online?
That's a broad question.
Nice small question.
The golden solution. No, I think generally it's mostly important to broadly inform on gender issues in general. Like as you all said, like it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like it happens in a system that we are quite aware of, but students are not always aware of them. And I think indeed, like what we did with Equischools, for example, was really building a trajectory and starting with the basis of gender stereotypes, how they work, how they all impact us, that they not only impact girls, but they impact us all, and they limit our possibilities. And really starting to get an idea about how gender works, how gender dynamics work, how power works, what patriarchy is and what it's not, because there's also a lot of misinformation about this topic. So I think giving the correct information. And I think indeed that's also what one of the things of the toolbox is trying to do with the quiz questions, is really like giving information that is correct. And I think at the moment that's very important also in a society where there's a lot of misinformation online. So I think getting broadly insights in this topic and then going to gender-based violence as one of the things that is a problem and that one of the things that is caused by these gender IDs. But I think this broader information is quite essential, and giving them the language and the tools to deal with it. And I think the language, indeed, I think the toolbox, it's very good that it will be translated both linguistically but also to context, because I think that's very important. We talk a lot about these topics, and today as well, in English. And a lot of people have English language, but they have no clue how to debate this, for example, in Dutch or in French. In their native tongue, they don't have a clue about how to talk to this and what is sex, what is gender identity, what is sexual orientation. So I think having this language to have a conversation with each other that has nuances gives them the tools to also form an opinion and get this conversation going. So I think that is the basic that we often skip. We often go directly into the topic that we want to discuss. And I think with gender, we just cannot because... and I think it is also important, talking about these topics with youngsters, it's important to not only have a lot of information and have a lot of depressing information, but to also offer them some strategies to intervene and to give them a bit of tools on what they can do. For example, all the information on violence in general can be very overwhelming. A lot of people have a lot of experience with violence as well in their own context, and it can just be overwhelming and dissuading to even go into the topic if they don't know how they can deal with it. And of course, that doesn't mean if you're a victim, you need to go offline, as we already discussed, but it can be like, what can I do? Which role can I take in if I see online gender-based violence? What are reporting tools? How can I indeed, what the toolbox also is, like how can I recognize comments that are not okay? How can I, on which platform, how can I report them? How can I talk with my friends about this on Discord, on WhatsApp, and things that I don't find okay? And I think it's very important that they experience that they can also do something about it, although it might be minor and it might be in their own little group, but at least in order to also take agency, you need to know what you can do as well. So I think the toolbox definitely gives some tools on that, but I think indeed also in the conversation and discussion that we have with other youngsters in the classroom, I think that will be an important part. And then, well, the topic that didn't have a lot of attention yet today, but I think is very important in the work we're doing and is very difficult to cope with at the moment, is the immense backlash that we're experiencing at the moment, which also teachers feel a lot and therefore even are more resistant to talk about these things. But there is backlash on gender, on feminism, and so on. It is mobilized, it is very intentional. The manosphere is there and is very real and is trying to have the same conversation with boys and men that we are trying to have, but for very different reasons. And I think we cannot ignore that this is happening and that we don't have two parallel conversations. It's not they're saying this and we're saying that. We're also a bit like trying to, like they're trying to disinform and we're trying to inform on similar topics. But they are influenced. Youngsters are influenced by this information, and I think we often don't talk about it or we ignore it, and it's like, yeah, but that's in online world, and we're now in the real world in the classroom. But it doesn't work like that. Like youngsters take these ideas into the classroom, and therefore, yes, I also sometimes have conversations about Andrew Tate in the classroom and what he says and why he says some things and why, and how, like having gender analysis with them on that matter and seeing like, okay, what attracts you in this influencer and what do you find important, but also what is a bit overwhelming. And I think like we need to have this discussion. We need to, and we're at the moment we're not really doing it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I have experience in the UK going into secondary schools and speaking to groups, and I've had teenage boys jump up and cheer and punch the air when you mention the name Andrew Tate, just because of the visceral impact of just saying that name. Just saying that name's enough for me usually at the best of times. But it shows you constantly bring it back into the public sphere, and it's interesting as well, isn't it, that it's a media literacy issue as well, in the sense that you've got information, trusted information coming from some quarters, then you've got other information that can't be trusted coming from social media, and then you've got mainstream media itself amplifying some of those messages, which I feel might be contributing to some of that backlash there as well. That gives us a nice segue into much more positive influence. So we're going to come to Jacob next. So Jacob, the question for you is what is the role of influencers like yourself to make a positive difference when tackling these kind of issues online? And what kind of help do you need from other key stakeholders out there, be it governments, be it industry, be it other social media users, to kind of make that happen? So how can you make a positive difference?
That's a great question. How I feel that influencers can make a positive difference with tackling gender-based violence is we can leverage our platforms to raise awareness for gender-based violence. Instead of just focusing on telling people to ignore the hate and push on through it, actually take the step forward and cut it by the root of the problem and see that and share the effects of the hateful side of online that it can have, while with the short and also the long-time effects too. We must take the opportunity to educate our audience on the issues that come with placing yourself publicly, while also the potential dangers that we all know are there and we can clearly see. Especially for the younger generation, entering into a world that they have no clue about. It's critical to promote non-violent behavior in our content and to promote positivity, while also the awareness in which comes with online of the hatefulness. By using our influence, we can spark important conversations, challenge stereotypes, and we can have resources there and share the resources that are already out there and the potential ones that are here to come, like the kit. I have been on social media myself since I was 14 years old, and I shared myself out there publicly. Since then, I can honestly not put into words how much hate I have received on a yearly basis and how that actually affected me personally and how nobody will understand that but me. I can't put into words for you here, as we'd be here all day, but what I have been going through and why I do stumble and still have anxiety riddled through me, even speaking when I've done so many speaks, is I've had name calling, I've been downgraded, I've been laughed at, I had death threats, I've been misgendered more times I can count, to be recorded in my face and spat at, and I've been harassed, I've been beaten up, and I've been sexually assaulted. As you can imagine, this really plays with someone's mental health. This can really play with somebody's head, and it can really take tolls on our personal life in ways that they can't even explain or put into words. This caused me to lose myself mentally. I am anxiety ripened. I have so much anxiety that I can't even control. To even stand here and talk to you today, it's so hard to lift my head. I get PTSD from the actions of others of repeating of the hatred that they've put me through, whether that be online or even worse, my personal life, because that's what's not spoken about. It can start online, but it will potentially come to your personal life. And that's something I wasn't taught as a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old. Sorry. I have actually took a big step back from social media myself, which is so different to me. From all these years, I never thought it would be something I did, but I had to do it for my own mentality, as I found myself losing myself and living into other people's perception on me, and taking comments that once in Brussels a year ago I said, no, don't accept anybody's hatred towards you, because words are just words until you manifest them into something bigger. But yet here I am a year later, riddled in all the words that have been said to me throughout the years that I was told comes with social media, that I was told to get over, to push through, that I was told for others to get over. I have gained so much positivity through it, and I know that social media has so many positives, that I couldn't even count. The support that I got from everyone throughout them years is brilliant, but it does not take away from now the PTSD that I have, the fear that I have of even you guys here that I know you aren't sitting there judging me, but I feel judged. That's what social media does. It doesn't matter if it's just a comment. That comment can be deleted, but it can't be forgotten. And that's where I feel the government and I feel industries can come in and help. I feel like if I was a 14-year-old child and I started out online and had this toolkit, or even just a person to stand and tell me the potential harmfulness, the potential dangers of going forward online, and to have a toolkit to actually just have my mind set forward for me, I would have been a complete different person and had so much more guidance. As just like life, social media comes with no instructions, and it's up to us to create them instructions, especially for the younger generation. I feel that the government itself can help more so than anyone else by actually funding and making it mandatory for schools to actually speak about this, to speak about social media, speak about the dangers, speak about the positives, speak about the lingo that is going on to it, but also speak about, once you're placing it out there, it's not to one person, it's to the world. And that's something that I don't feel young kids, younger generation, and even adults understand. I feel like if we had the help of the government and even industries such as brands, big brands like Nike, if we had just world-known industries and the government behind us funding and pushing forward the potential dangers going forward on social media, I feel that would be a big step forward in creating a safer place for young people growing up, and also helping them to not only track what online is and where it is to go, not that we know where it is to go, but where it is to go for them, but also the mental side of what it's going to take on once you take that step forward, because we can't stop other people hating, but we can help them people that are getting hated overcome it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Really well said, and we really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your feelings with us, and I appreciate that was difficult to do, so thank you. But I think what Jacob was saying there really sort of resonates with the things that you've heard today from other speakers and other panel members, is that it is a multi-stakeholder approach, that everybody plays a responsibility in this part, and that a lot of the things that we're talking about are societal issues. So in order to combat GBV, gender-based violence online, we need to also be turning an eye to the issues that are existing in society, which I think comes back to what you were saying, Miriam, about, if you like, needing those foundations, tackling the information and the skills needed about the foundations of the topic before you start turning to some of the issues, sort of not putting the cart before the horse, if you understand that expression. But I think there's kind of a lot of work still to be done there, but a lot of responsibility, as Jacob highlighted, for industries, for governments around the world to play their part in terms of content moderation, in terms of being able to flag things up more quickly, to remove things that shouldn't be there, and for more strategies for individual users to respond to things as well. Let's turn a little bit back to the coalface then. So a question for Donata. Sorry, Sophie, you're going to have to hand that mic back down. So Donata, obviously you spoke briefly at the start about your experience in school working with your students about these issues. Would you like to talk a little bit more about the kind of issues that they face and what steps you take and your school take to resolve those issues?
Right. Okay. Actually, the topic has been dealt with extensively when a femicide took place in Italy. A femicide that shocked the news, the one that was mentioned at the beginning of this conference by one of the panelists, the femicide of Giulia Cecchettin. This homicide was in the news for a long time because it somehow shocked the public opinion, not just because of its violence, but because of the fact that it was committed by a student, a university student, who apparently came from a good family, who had never shown any particular problems, and this event shocked the news to the point that somehow it was the students themselves who somehow wanted to discuss this topic. So this topic was widely discussed in the class. And I teach a class of students. I teach a class where there are 24 boys and 3 girls. And the boys were particularly concerned about this, and they said that they are concerned about the conference because they say that a girl should always be protected at all times. And I asked them, why should a girl be protected? Whose fault is it? Why isn't a girl be free to go out on their own and enjoy herself? And they told me it is not because of them. It is because of the society. So there obviously is a problem. There is a problem, and the students want to and need to talk about this. But as I said before, we need the necessary training to deal with these topics, which are very complex and require somehow an interdisciplinary approach. I would love to have a sort of handout or handbook as the one that Miriam presented to discuss with my students. Concerning the toolbox, I would like to see a series of follow-up activities to be implemented in the classroom after all the data has been collected, after all the responses of the students have been collected. I would welcome a series of follow-up activities to do in the classroom so as to involve the students because once the problem has been identified and monitored, some solutions need to be proposed. And so I certainly believe that students, all the students, male students in particular, need to be involved in the, in a careful analysis of the problem, of the language that is used. I agree with Miriam that it all goes down to a language problem. So there should be a sort of gender-based etiquette concerning the appropriate way of communicating with others. So I don't know if I answered the question, but...
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that raises the point that you raised as well, Miriam, about language again, but the nuances of language use online. And of course, online, it's not just words and language, it's visual based, it's auditory based. There are sort of other mediums in which people communicate. So there's a lot of nuance and complexity around those interactions as well. So, and I think
when you're a teen, when you're a kid, you don't often master the language. Because your language is limited, and somehow in the social arena, the language that is mostly used is the language of hate and hatred, just like Jacob has shown us. So we need to start from the very language, from the very basics of communication and communicating disagreement, dislike, which can be decent without being offensive.
Absolutely, and understanding how and why people disagree, I think, as well, and that isn't always hatred. It can be expression. It might be inappropriate expression in that context, but to kind of understand the nuances around that as well, definitely. And finally, last but not least, because I'm conscious of time, I want to make sure we get everyone in. So question for Sophie. So if the mic could come back down this way. So Sophie, obviously you manage the Revenge Porn Helpline in the UK, which is for adults aged 18 or over to contact. But how do helplines such as yours and others support combating these root causes of gender-based violence?
Thanks, Gareth. And yeah, I know we're very short of time, so I will try not to take too long. But first, actually, I wanted to thank Jacob for what you just said. I thought what you said was really, really powerful. And without wishing to burden you individually, it's voices like yours that are really, really important in this space. The Revenge Porn Helpline has supported over 20,000 people, and I can tell you 99.9% of those people would not be able to articulate in front of a room full of people what their experience has been, for completely understandable reasons of feeling violated and utterly devastated in all aspects of their lives. So not to put any pressure on you, but it's really powerful to hear you speaking in the way that you did. But what I think we can bring, although we are primarily a support service and we support people in that moment of need, we've in the nearly 9 years that we've been doing this as the only dedicated service. We were originally the only dedicated service, and there are hardly any globally that only do this work. We've accumulated a huge amount of data, knowledge, and experience of what people are experiencing with these harms. And when I first started, it was always thought of as revenge porn, which is a problematic term that we don't have time to go into now. But yes, I know. It's couple split up. He's cross, shares their images, and then it's over. And that is just such a limited way of looking at it. But what we are seeing is context, different manifestations of intimate image abuse, domestic abuse context, stalking, voyeurism, and then the intersectional lens and different impacts on people, particularly black and minoritized women in these spaces. But we've now developed nearly 9 years of data and case studies, and we can use that to raise awareness, and we run awareness campaigns to talk about keeping safe online. And there is nothing intrinsically wrong with sharing images with someone that you trust, but we just try and encourage people to do that safely in a way that is comfortable and respectful, and with consent, of course, at all times. And that brings me to sessions like this one and projects like this. But when we are the team as a whole, we try and get involved in lots of academic research, because we know that that's going to be the foundation of policy change, legislation. So we take part in consultations and round tables, because we need to talk about the intersection of abuses. We need to talk about the fact that these things don't happen in isolation, and that they are underpinned by structural inequalities. And those are the conversations that we need to be having with young people, and using toolkits like this. It does all join together. So it's really important that we engage. One of our really big projects is around training, trying to get into organisations, or particularly universities is an area that we're really interested in getting to. We did a survey of university staff, and they just felt skilled in speaking to young people who are experiencing these forms of abuse. And we know that it's really important for the first contact that somebody has when they make a disclosure of intimate image abuse is going to be really powerful and shape how they progress through that experience. So really important to get some tools into those hands. So lots and lots of work to do. I think we've just touched the edges of that here today, but I think we do have a role to play in sharing that knowledge and experience for those people that don't have the voice. We have to try and be that voice for them, to support those people who do feel that they can speak up. It's really important. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, and I think that's a nice point to end on, but maybe not the most positive point. Is that obviously there's considerable work to still do in this area, and of course, events like today and the projects like Menable are scratching the surface of something that's a much deeper rooted and a more complex issue, but does highlight that for lots of different educators and different roles, that they are learning are almost at the same pace alongside their students in terms of how to deal with these things and how to talk about these things where maybe you haven't had to do so before. So great to see the different types of influence, if you like, that you're having in different areas of education and awareness, and the important work that you all do. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and talking about your work today. I'm very conscious of time because we're just about, we're a little bit over. We're just about keeping you on time. So we're going to turn now to the last little bit of the event today. We're going to hand back over to Sabrina to close the event and just issue some final remarks. So if we just give the panelists a round of applause, please. Thank you.